Well, I asked, where's the beef? Let's call this for what this is. Oh my God! They are so hopelessly woke. How dare you? That is the intellectual capital of the left today. Give me a break. You are now watching the Daily Roundup. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Daily Roundup on this, a Wednesday, February the 15th, 2023. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little bit about my co-host, shall I? Do you know that today is National Lantern Festival Day? And my co-host was going to launch her floating lantern this afternoon, but she's afraid that NORAD might shoot it down. She is the she-devil with a spatula. She is the Khaleesi of Coburg. She is Tamara Ugolini. How you doing there, Tamara?
Hey, David. Well, it always is such a boost to me after your enthusiastic introduction. So thank you for that. But what national day is it? I missed that.
It's a Lantern Festival Day. And, you know, there's these floating and flying lanterns. And I think the origin of Lantern Festival Day goes back to China. And right now, things that are floating and flying around North America that originate in China, they're kind of flotation devices non grata right now, I should think, Tamara Ugolini, what with, balloons the size of 3 school buses, just hovering around Montana where the nuclear missile silos happen to be. By the way, what is your take on what's going on? All these unidentified flying objects and supposed weather balloons from China. I can't imagine. I'm really struggling to figure out why the, mandarins in Beijing would be really keen on finding out what the weather pattern is in Montana. I don't see Montana as a huge tourist destination spot for the Chinese people. So what the heck is going on, Tamara Ugolini?
I wish I knew. The thing that always speaks to me is whenever the mainstream media and kind of the narrative followers say, oh, look at this over here, look at over here. I always wonder what the other hand is doing. Like, what is this a distraction from? And there's so many things going on in the world today, including the train derailments and these spills. And so I wonder what this is distracting the general population from. In a larger, more relevant context that they're not even privy to at all.
Yeah, I think it's prudent to think that way these days. And speaking of the balloons from China and the mainstream media, as you know, last week, one of the first narratives that was floated was all about, well, under Trump's regime, 3 of these balloons happened by. Tamara, I don't believe that. Because the way the mainstream media in the U.S. hates Donald Trump, they would dissect him alive on the basis of, national security and national sovereignty. Oh, by the way, don't build the wall. Let the illegal aliens from Mexico come in. But when it's a floating device going around, I don't remember any of these news reports. And if that was a true story, and hey, I might be wrong, I think that would be front page coverage. Isn't it odd that we found out about Chinese balloons coming to America at the exact same time Chinese balloons were coming to America under the Biden watch?
Yeah, exactly. And with all these, even the mainstream media acknowledging, oh, well, the UFOs and extraterrestrial stuff, I'm like, great. Is Project Bluebeam coming true now? But I think that's a topic for another day because we have a ton of stuff to follow here. And
yes.
So if you're just joining us, we are currently streaming on 4 different platforms. So this is our daily live stream where we kind of dissect the news of the day and get some of your feedback as well, which you can do directly on some of those platforms. So unfortunately, if you're joining us on YouTube, they're known as the censorship platform. And unfortunately, there are certain topics and opinions that we cannot safely discuss on YouTube. So I would recommend that you head on over to Rumble, Odyssey, or even Twitter, where we're currently streaming. And on Rumble, you can engage with us directly using what is called a Rumble rant. So if you give us a small monetary donation, we'll read your comment on screen and provide any sort of feedback or commentary in response. Or on Odyssey, it's called a hyper chat. And so typically we'll try to reserve those for the very end because we have a full litany of topics to get to today. Including, I guess, something that, David, you have been following very closely, which is that there will be an update to the Busty Lemieux saga, hopefully tonight at a school board meeting. So what's the latest scoop there?
I love to hear you call him Busty Lemieux. There's just something charming the way you say it. I mean, it sounds like an old vaudeville performer, right? Except it's a dude with Z-cup fake breasts. I mean, yeah, I guess we could say, speaking of balloons or zeppelins, as the case may be. But these aren't being shot down. These are being protected by the Halton District School Board. The story is you know what? I think we might have a video clip. Lincoln and I ventured out to Oakville Trafalgar High School on Monday. That's where Carrie Luke Lemieux, a.k.a. Kayla Lemieux, a.k.a. Busty Lemieux, has created, well, I guess, Tamara, an international laughingstock situation for the Halton District School Board. And so before, why don't we just run a few seconds of my intro and my idea of a temporary solution to those grotesque fake nipples that keep protruding Busty Lemieux's blouse. And the hint here is not even Red Green could have thought of this idea for duct tape. Check it out. Trans, it's good. Well, I'm afraid it's not good. It's completely inappropriate. David Menzies for Rebel News here in Oakville, Ontario. Well, folks, I'm standing outside Oakville Trafalgar High School, and guess who's back in class after a prolonged absence? That would be Carrie Lemieux, a.k.a. Kayla Lemieux, a.k.a. Busty Lemieux. He is that humanoid who shows up at class to teach shop sporting enormous Z-cup fake breasts with protruding nipples through his blouse. Now, this has caused all kinds of commotion. A lot of the students aren't happy with this. Most of the parents aren't happy with this. But for the Halton District School Board to investigate the fact that maybe this is a prankster at work, that maybe this is someone who is a sexual pervert, they'll hear none of it. Their solution to the outrage, something that made the Halton District School Board an international laughingstock these last several months, was to actually take Lemieux and put him in other schools in the district. Yeah, what a great idea that is, folks? Nobody else in all those other schools, nobody else is going to notice that this is an obvious male with fake Z-cup breasts dressing completely inappropriately.
Yeah, this story just continues to get worse and worse, and the school board's really doing nothing about it, right? Is that what's happening here?
Well, here is the update. And by the way, for any of our viewers, Tamara Ugolini, if they are in the Greater Toronto area, tonight at I believe it's 7 or 7:30, it's kind of irrelevant to me because I am banned for life for going to the Halton District School Board headquarters or any of their properties. I think it's because I ask insensitive questions. And once I showed up dressed exactly like Busty Lemieux, the cycling shorts, the tight white blouse, the long blonde hair, a wig, of course. And, it's kind of funny, isn't it, Tamara, that the Halton District School Board, they're really down with that radical transgender revolution when it's in front of the kids. When it comes to their ivory tower, they call the police. And I'm not kidding, folks. By the way, we will be challenging that, I'm sure, legally. I don't think they have any ability as a public school board to ban people and ban reporters for life. But tonight, they are having the preliminary findings of their own internal investigation of whether or not they can apply a dress code. And Tamara, if you and our viewers are saying, this sounds like deja vu all over again, well, that's because it is, because in November, they already went through this kabuki theater. They investigated whether they can have a dress code. Oh, and by the way, Tamara, I must point out, I'm not talking about a dress code for students, which exists. I'm not talking about a dress code for Halloween costumes, which exists at Halton District, but a dress code for staff, which doesn't exist. And the result of that finding, Tamara Ugolini, was the fact that if we apply a dress code to our teachers, there is the potential for liability, that we will be sued. So our recommendation is no dress code for the faculty. Now, Tamara, a couple of things. Does this even make sense to you? If a female biological student were to present herself like Busty Lemieux does, she'd be suspended. Secondly, what changed since November? If this board said in November, oh, no, can't do it, and suddenly 3 months later in February, well, maybe we can. Nothing fundamentally changed in labor law codes. And speaking of labor law, when that decision came out in November, some of Canada's top labor lawyers, Tamara, including Howard Levitt, said this is bullshit. Even in a unionized environment, you can have a dress code. And of course you can. I mean, the very idea that somebody, what if you were in an employment situation, Tamara, say you were a McDonald's crew member. You can't come into work wearing a tank top and short shorts. You're going to be fired. It doesn't matter. So I'd like to get your take on this, Tamara. Are they going to come down on the side they did in November, or did some other things change, i.e. they continue to be a laughingstock the world over, this Halton District School Board, and we saw the emergence, I think going back to December, of Ontario Students First. It's a parent group which has hired a lawyer and who has told them, you fix this or see you in court. Do you think maybe that was the leverage for these idiots? And I mean that. In my 40 years of journalism, Tamara, it has been my experience that the most fundamentally stupid people I have ever met are working at school boards. I'm sorry, folks, that's just the way it is. Case in point, Halton District School Board, case closed. So what is your prediction in terms of what the parents are going to hear tonight?
Well, I always find it very ironic that these boards and bodies, governing bodies, are responsible for essentially investigating themselves and reviewing their own internal policies. I mean, you're never going to find anything wrong when you just reflect into yourself. And that's sort of been the reoccurring theme here that I've seen anyway throughout the kind of COVID narrative and just reporting in general on these governing bodies and school boards. But I think definitely the public backlash has been so great that obviously now they're bringing this situation forward again 3 months later. And I would really hope to see some more appropriate attire recommended or even mandated, I guess, for lack of a better word, for staff to wear, especially when you're in front of children. You know, this is like a very sensitive topic. These are young, impressionable kids. And all of that aside, which is a huge issue in and of itself, there are very real safety concerns, as you've brought up repeatedly throughout your various reports on Busty, or Carrie, which is oddly a gender neutral name in and of itself. So why you'd have to switch from Carrie to Kayla is beyond me. But anyway, you know, you cannot be in a shop class operating machinery with long locks over your shoulders in the vicinity of this machinery and having these grotesque balloons also hanging from your shoulders and your chest. I mean, I took shop class in high school. I've used machinery throughout university. It's very clearly instilled into you that there are basic safety precautions, which are being completely disregarded here under the guise of being inclusive and tolerant and diverse. And it is perverse and it is unsafe and it needs to be addressed. This is ridiculous that it's gone on this long.
You're 100% right, Tamara Ugolini. You know, not only the long locks that are not in a hair bun or tied up in a bun, but long sleeves, the wearing of jewelry. Also, we know from sources his classes are a shambles right now. The kids don't respect him. We have a photo of a child, a student, I should say, sitting next to him, vaping in class. And as I've often said, forget about the Ministry of Education. Where's the Ministry of Labor on this? Or to enforce public safety rules in a shop class? Would that be considered transphobic? And let's not, well, and check out that video. As you said, look how close that saw, is coming to those humongous pendulous breasts. It's an accident waiting to happen. And, you know, here's the thing, Tamara. This just tells you how uber woke, how beyond woke the Halton District School Board is. It seems to me that to even question the motives of Lemieux would in itself be an act of transphobia. And yet, where is the transgender community on this issue? They're nowhere to be found. Correction. There's going to be a member of the trans community at the school board meeting tonight, I've been told, who is going to argue in favor of the parents' view that this guy needs to cover up. Because as we've often said, Tamara, if you were genuinely transitioning to a member of the opposite sex, so if I was going female or you were going male, the whole idea is to blend in, isn't it? It's not to be a drag queen or a drag king caricature of the other sex. So nobody believes that this is a genuine transition, not even those in the trans community. So it leaves two other points, and we've often talked about this. Either this is a cosmic prank, that this guy is anti-woke, and he is pushing his luck to see how far he can go in terms of being a ridiculous caricature, in which case he might be a bit of a hero, I got to tell you, Tamara. Or secondly, and this is where I'm increasingly leaning towards in terms of what I'm hearing from other parents, this is someone who is a sexual pervert. This is someone who suffers from autogenophilia, a male that gets sexually aroused by the clothing and the props of females. And like you said, Tamara, because he's in front of minors, this makes it more prudent than ever that these educrats start asking these questions, start investigating this matter. But what do you think of their strategy these last several months? Oh, you know what? We'll take him out of Oakville and we'll put him in some schools in, Burlington. Yeah, that's the ticket. And hopefully nobody will notice those Z-cup breasts and those protruding nipples. Can you imagine? Of course, everybody notices. I mean, it is unbelievable that was their solution to this, akin to an ostrich burying its head in the sand. And yeah, I know ostriches don't really do that, but I'm just trying to come up with a metaphor right now. So right off the hopper, Tamara, what did you make of this incredibly wimpy and cowardly decision just to move them around to other schools and let them deal with this hot potato?
Yeah, that's exactly it. The hot potato, pass it on. And I mean, this guy, girl, woman, character sticks out like a sore thumb. There's no just like brushing this to the side and pretending like it doesn't exist, especially after it's received international headlines. And I believe even the education minister in Ontario, Stephen Lecce, urged the board, right, to review their policy on this and to institute some sort of dress code. He's even condemned this as inappropriate and urged the board to, I guess, as they're doing again, revisiting and reinvestigating themselves. So we'll see how that goes tonight. But it also ties in with this report here that we have by the Toronto Star, which was that the province has ended suspension of Peel Public School Board. So the province essentially took over the Peel District School Board in 2020 amid concerns, I guess, of racism and general dysfunction, and they weren't being inclusive and tolerant. And so the Ministry of Education swooped in and they took over this school board to correct, dismantle anti-Black racism within it. And I guess it's now left parents being cautiously optimistic. I have an older article on this, but regardless, it shows, in my opinion, that the province has leverage here, that they can come into a school board and they can say, hey, what you're doing is inappropriate. The way that you're running the show is making a laughing stock of our public education system. And we are going to come in, we're going to take it over, we're going to correct whatever damaging criteria or policies that you're instituting or trying to uphold under the guise, again, of being like so inclusive and tolerant while simultaneously damaging young impressionable children. So why the province hasn't done this, yet simultaneously condemns the way that the school board is conducting itself, is beyond me. I guess it's because it probably goes against the status quo of being that gender diverse, SOGI oriented, and SOGI is the sexual orientation and gender identity curriculum that sort of embedded itself in every aspect of Ontario education, and I mean in other provinces as well, but here specifically in Ontario. So the province has the mandate to be able to step in here and say, whoa, this is inappropriate and grotesque, and we're going to correct this wrong while we suspend all of you from your duties while you figure it out. Why do you think that the province hasn't done that?
You know what? I will go even further. Well, first of all, I really don't know what's going on with this Doug Ford government, Tamara. It seems to be embracing all the woke policies that they condemned by the McGuinty-Wynne governments, the Liberal governments, the last 15 odd years in Ontario. Speaking of being banned from premises, I used to be welcomed at Ford Fest events. I used to be welcomed at Ontario PC events. And again, cops approach me and say they want you to leave or we have to arrest you for trespassing. You explain that. Meanwhile, Doug Ford rolls out the red carpet for the Toronto Star, an organization that he used to call, along with his brother, the late great Rob Ford, a bunch of maggots, not only welcoming them in, but giving them a $500 million a year gambling license. So you explain to me what's behind the scenes, but politics aside, Tamara Ugolini, here's what I have to say. Why do we have school boards? And I'm actually quite serious. We have a Ministry of Education and we have principals, and principals have a lot of power. I mean, just witness what happened yesterday in a handful of schools in the province. Principals saying, no, you're not having Valentine's Day here for some kind of cockamamie reason. The chocolates are not good for you. What about those kids that can't afford to buy a Valentine's card, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm saying, Tamara, let's remove this layer of blubber in the education system, school boards. Let's just have the Ministry of Education be at the top. Let's have these empowered principals be at the bottom and go from there, because every time, I'm honest with you here, I rarely exit a school board meeting going, man, my tax dollars are really working for me. These guys are great. These gals are so smart. No, it's quite the opposite. Let's look at getting rid of these school boards. And you know what? Maybe the Halton District School Board, the Peel District School Board, the Waterloo one, the Toronto one, they're all horrid. maybe this is going to be the catalyst to have a serious discussion of why do we need these boards in the first place?
It's just more layers in this bloated bureaucracy that you can never get through, reach anybody. You can never get answers to any questions. And even if you show up personally at the meetings to air your grievances and try to solicit those answers, they'll just turn off your mic and tell you to go sit down. As I recently witnessed at a BC school board meeting, and we'll have a report. Drea Humphrey will have a report on that, I think, later today. So yeah, school boards coast to coast to coast are all a mess, entangled in this woke ideology that really is immune to any sort of scrutiny with logic and reasoning. But we have a lot of other topics to cover. So we're going to go to a quick ad break before we come back and discuss some more policy that a lot of our viewers are not impressed with, and that's global governance. So come back after this ad.
I am speaking to you at a moment of grave crisis, when violent and fanatical men are attempting to destroy the unity and the freedom of Canada.
But after weeks of dangerous and unlawful activities, after weeks of people being harassed in their neighborhoods and small businesses forced to close,
as democracy flourishes in Canada,
we don't always agree, and that's okay.
Because individual liberty is cherished in Canada.
Our government will always defend freedom of expression and freedom of peaceful assembly.
It has now been demonstrated to us by a few misguided persons.
After evidence of increased ideologically motivated violent extremism activity across the country,
just how fragile a democratic society can be,
it became clear that local and provincial authorities needed more tools to restore order and keep people safe.
These are matters of the utmost gravity, and I want to tell you what the government is doing to deal with them.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act.
The public's legitimate right to know why the government proclaimed an emergency and whether the actions it took were appropriate.
It is our view that there was no justification whatsoever to invoke the Emergencies Act.
This is so tough to watch. There's no reason for that. They were literally running the horses through the crowd.
The police came straight to me and he targeted me and he took his gun of tear gas and he actually shot me directly in my legs.
Was it worth invoking the Emergencies Act, ma'am, to trample on the rights and freedoms of Canadians?
Why do you think excessive honking means that the government should strip citizens away from their rights?
Our next and final witness is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Order à l'ordre.
You know, Tamara, before we get... Oh, go ahead, my friend.
Well, I was just going to say the formal screening of that documentary, Trudeau on Trial, which that introduction always just gives me the shivers, the contrast between the two Trudeaus, the only prime ministers to ever invoke that essentially martial law on their own citizens. The premiere will be on February 20th, so a mere 5 days from now. That's Monday night in Edmonton. And so you can head on over to that website, trudeauontrial.com, and you can purchase your tickets there. On the Monday night, that's February 20th, it'll be a dinner and a movie package deal. And then I believe there will be another one March 8th. And that's just the screening of the movie itself. And so it will be a little bit more affordable for people. I know that a lot of Canadians are struggling right now due to just inflation, as official opposition leader Pierre Poilievre has coined it. And so if you don't want to head out for dinner and a movie, which I personally think will be a great time to also mingle with some rebels and other like-minded folks and have some good food, you can head on over to the other event in March and also attend a screening there. So hopefully we can bring this also into other provinces. I guess we'll see how the show unfolds, but it was so well done. Kudos to everyone behind the scenes that was involved in that documentary. What a powerful showing and display of how absolutely inept our government has been over the last few years, and arguably since they took office in 2015.
Correct. 2015. Yeah. Time flies. And Tamara, as you mentioned, seeing the two Trudeaus, or is it sort of a Trudeau and a half? I know there are questions about the paternity of Junior. Anyway, what shivers me timbers is those scenes of Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister and deputy prime minister. She's always got that smug cat that ate the canary look on her face. And I just want to appeal to our viewers, if there are any detectives out there. Do you know tonight at 7:00 in Toronto, the Canadian Journalists for Free Expression, they're having their gala dinner. And when you go to register to get in, and here's the question. We know it's in Toronto, but we don't know the venue. And that's a no-no, ethically speaking. If a cabinet minister is there, they are compelled to have the venue listed, but they just don't care. They just break the rules with impunity. But what got me, Tamara Ugolini, is that when you go to register, it's not the Canadian Journalists for Free Expression contact or website you're directed to, but it's the Finance Ministry of Canada. Can you imagine that, folks? Instead of the organization that's putting this on, they send you to their ministerial masters to get in. It's been hours since I sent my email. I don't expect it to be returned. So I'd just like to pay an impromptu house call. I mean, after all, Tamara, I'm a Canadian. I'm a journalist. I love freedom of expression. Why wouldn't they want me there? So if anyone might know through the grapevine where this venue might be, that'd be great. And hopefully we can get a video out of that. But I digress. Well, many globalism stories on the agenda. I know that's a favorite of yours. Goodness gracious. At the World Government Summit of 2023, Klaus Schwab speaks of the 5 dimensions that comprise leadership. I think we have a brief clip of Klaus Schwab and the 5 dimensions. Let's check it out.
I don't know if that's the Klaus Schwab clip.
Yep, no, my mistake, Tamara Ugolini. That is indeed the 5th dimension, singing one of their greatest hits, Up, Up and Away in My Beautiful Balloon, which, again, you don't want to do these days. You might just get shot down with all the Chinese junk up at the 20,000, 30,000 feet mark. Nope, my apologies. That was the 5th dimension, not Klaus Schwab's 5 dimensions of leadership. Let's throw to the James Bond villain himself.
And the last factor I want to mention is resilience, the capability to bounce back, because there will be certainly what we call the black swans, the unpleasant surprises which will come in our way. So, Minister, dear participants, I wish you a very good meeting. And just as a last point, I want to say the most important factor to master the future is leadership. And for me, I have my own definition. Leadership comprises 5 dimensions: soul, brain, heart, muscles, and good nerves. Let me explain. Soul stands for purpose, for ambition. Brains for professionalism, for permanently upgrading your capabilities. Heart for passion. We have to be passionate about what we are doing. Otherwise, we will fail. Muscles for the capability to translate our vision into action, into impact. And good nerves to have the resilience to withstand also difficult situations. So I wish you soul, brain, heart, muscles, and good nerves. Thank you.
Is this
Tamara, do you think that presentation was coming from, the base of a dormant volcano or something like that, or maybe a floating blimpy thing from Austin Powers? It just that every time that guy speaks, the hairs on the back of my neck just stand at attention. What do you make of those 5 pillars? And do you think Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum are indicative of those 5 pillars of leadership?
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to know, when did we ever elect Klaus Schwab? Where did he come from? Who determined that he was like some sort of unnamed leader here to be directing world governance? So for anyone who missed it, this is a clip from the World Government Summit, if you can believe that such a thing exists, that took place recently in Dubai. And I guess Klaus is one of those leaders of something. I don't even know, other than leading the New World Order, what exactly he was ever put in place to do, who he was elected by or even appointed. But yeah, he says that there are black swans that are going to come out at us or at them. I'm not sure what that reference exactly was, and I wonder if that was a threat or a promise from the oligarchs who brought you things like COVID-19 and climate alarmism. But yes, he very much redefines the soul. So I thought that was really creepy and also soulless of him. Brains, which didn't include any form of, critical thought or questioning or insight, wisdom, those sort of characteristics. The heart, with passion. I mean, I guess that's great if your heart is intact and not suffering the ill effects of myocarditis or pericarditis. And then muscles. I thought that was really interesting because you have to have the muscle capability to take action. Also seemed like a bit of a thinly veiled threat there. Really weird to read between the lines of some of these things. And then, of course, good nerves. So I suspect that Schwab thinks that he himself has good nerves, and I just wonder how much adversity he's ever faced in his life to determine whether or not his nerves have ever been pushed. And for the whole thing, again, for him to be talking about being a master of the future, who are you and where did you come from?
Are you implying he's a time traveler, Tamara Ugolini?
No, maybe he fell from one of those balloons.
You've said a lot there, and I agree with everything you said. And also, I wanted to fall back on what's the deal with this black swan? I thought we had to get away from any kind of negative connotations that have the word black as part of them, such as blackball, blackmail, blacklist. Those are all on the progressives do not say list, as if those terms have anything to do with race, but that's how those lunatics think. Nevertheless, you are quite right. I mean, these 5 dimensions, they don't add up. I would say there's 3 dimensions, one being tyranny, as you alluded to, Tamara. Who elected this guy? Who is he accountable to? Transparency or lack thereof. We saw how Klaus Schwab treated the independent media in Davos last month, which was, to make like the Roadrunner in the Warner Brothers cartoons and run for the hills. He's got no time for questions there. and hypocrisy. And by that, I mean, do as I say, not as I do. So, Tamara Ugolini, you give up your car. Is Klaus Schwab going to give up his chauffeur-driven limo? No, he is not. Tamara, you put down that hamburger and eat that cricket and maggot sandwich. Do you think Klaus Schwab is going to be putting down his filet mignon steak? No. And I mean, these people are just such hypocrites. It's beyond, right off the charts. And you know how ironic in a way, Tamara, that he's in Dubai, right? This is a place where the thermometer can go to 50 degrees centigrade. This is a place where Lamborghinis are as commonplace there as Toyota Corollas are here. Do you think Klaus Schwab would say to his hosts, do you want to turn your air conditioning units off? Do you want to park the Lambo and take public transit down to the Forum? Of course not. These people with this one rule for thee, one rule for me, do as I say, not as I do, which is to say, Tamara, when I see Klaus Schwab eating a bug sandwich and taking public transit, then I'll do it. But I don't think that occurrence is going to come anytime soon, or ever for that matter.
No, absolutely not. And we see their continued travels. I mean, how many times already has Schwab traveled the globe for these various summits that, again, he's speaking to primarily, maybe not Dubai, but at other ones, democratically elected leaders and instilling his own worldview onto them, while saying things like, we have to tackle climate change, and I'm going to fly in on my private jet, and then I'm going to catch my private helicopter before I catch my private entourage of luxury vehicle to the event itself, where, as you already mentioned, we will eat like kings, and all you little plebs can eat the bugs. Eat the bugs. I think we have a shirt in our Rebel News store with Schwab's face and eat the bugs. But
start the banquet without me, Tamara. And before we move on, we have another video of Schwab. This is a little disturbing. It has to do with technologies, and just listen closely, folks, to the language he uses. Unbelievable.
I wrote in 2015 the book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and I mentioned 23 or 24 technologies which will change the world, like crypto and so on and so on. The book was considered science fiction. All those technologies have become reality, and there are new technologies. And I would say we are in the second minute, or whatever we want to call. We are at the beginning. When you look at technology transformation, it usually takes place in the terms of an S-curve. And we are just now where we move into the exponential phase. And I agree, artificial intelligence, but not only artificial intelligence, but also the metaverse, near space technologies, and I could go on and on, synthetic biology. Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, very much affected, and who masters those technologies in some way will be the master of the world.
I don't know about you, Tamara, but when I hear a guy with a German accent talking about mastering something and being masters of the world, I get a bad vibe, that whole master race kind of thing that was floated about 80-something years ago. I mean, what is this guy going on about, masters of the world? Again, it goes back to the chutzpah here of someone who is non-elected and unaccountable.
Yeah, exactly. And questioning, who will run the world, who will own the technology, as though he doesn't know. It will be him and his billionaire oligarch buddies who are traveling the world at these various summits and collaborating behind closed doors in their little backdoor discussions and their gala meets, those are the ones who will own the technology and the metaverse that we will all be subjected to, unless the population will say no and push back. And it starts with things like the digital ID. And we have seen massive resistance to the idea of having a digital ID for anything from the vaccine passports to your healthcare, which are tied in together. But the KTDI, the Known Traveler Digital Identity, it's a partnership with the Canadian government. It's really a WEF brainchild sort of technology. And as these things start to become normalized and sold to the public under the guise of being convenient and faster and more effective, that's where we need to say no and resist that sort of enslavement, because it really has the potential to go there. It's a very slippery slope, and you will see these hypocrite, unelected oligarchs discussing these things more and more and really trying to promote and sell them. And another point that we have from the World Government Summit is Twitter owner, CEO Elon Musk, who basically denounces the idea of a world government. And so, take Elon as you will, with a grain of salt, as I do, but let's show what his thoughts were on the whole event.
One thing I should say, and I know this is called the World Government Summit, but I think we should be maybe a little bit concerned about actually becoming too much of a single world government. If I may say, that we want to avoid creating a civilizational risk by having, frankly, this may sound a little odd, too much cooperation between governments. If you look at, say, at history and the rise and fall of civilizations, that really all throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen, but it hasn't meant the doom of humanity as a whole, because there've been all these separate civilizations that were separated by great distances. And so, say like while Rome was falling, Islam was rising, and so you had like the sort of caliphate doing incredibly well while Rome was doing terribly. And that actually ended up being a source of preservation of knowledge and many scientific advancements. And so, so I think we want to be a little bit cautious about being too much of a single civilization, because if we are too much of a single civilization, then if the whole thing may collapse. I'm obviously not suggesting war or anything like that, but I think we want to be a little bit wary of actually cooperating too much. It sounds a little odd, but we want to have some amount of civilizational diversity, such that if something does go wrong with some part of civilization, that the whole thing doesn't collapse, and humanity keeps moving forward.
That sound you hear in the background, Tamara, are all the progressives deleting their Twitter accounts because, oh my goodness, someone who was cherished by the left once upon a time, primarily based on the merits of his electric cars, suddenly he's turning into persona non grata on the left. And I say, thank God for Elon Musk, because, Tamara, if he hadn't taken over Twitter, we wouldn't have known the degree of rot that was there. I mean, if you're following any of those hearings south of the border, the way Twitter influenced the election, the way Twitter violated the First Amendment, I hope some of those ex-Twitter executives go to jail. But here you have him as a counterbalance speaking out about this globalization that Klaus Schwab seems to be so excited about. And, the left, I should say, Tamara, they will always say about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, they'll say, well, you said it yourself. He's non-elected, unaccountable. What do you have to be afraid of? No, here's what I'm afraid of. As we know, democratically voted in leaders of the world go to these World Economic Forums, and behind closed doors, they have meetings with Schwab and his ilk, and they are very influential in setting government policy. Make no mistake about that. That's the problem. Yes, they're not elected. They technically have no power, but they are the influencers of those who are elected and have power.
Yeah, they have great money power to lobby our government and institute policies, and they're billionaires for a reason, right? Our governments, the bloated bureaucracy makes a pretty penny, most of them, but they are not necessarily billionaires. And so there's definitely a lobbying factor that takes place behind closed doors. Even we saw it at the World Health Summit in Berlin in October of last year, of 2022. There was a swanky hotel restaurant. There was a hotel bar where we could still access, but there was a swanky hotel restaurant that the windows were completely papered. It was entirely secured. So there was security making sure that us mediocre attendees couldn't get in. But that's where, and we have it. We have a clip of it, buried in one of the reports, one of my reports. I think it was the day 2 wrap up. Was that, we went and we said, hey, we're looking to get a bite to eat. How can we get some food from the restaurant? And we were swiftly informed, no, this is for the high level attendees. So the ones that you don't see that are pulling the strings up at the top, they're there in the background, but you won't see them because they have a litany of security detail and they are kept very in the shadows. So there's these shadowy entities that are pulling the strings and have a lot of power and lobby wiggle room that you will never see, and they will never be accountable. You can never ask them questions. They'll never give you answers, but don't get it twisted. They're there in the background in the shadows.
So in other words, before you go there, Tamara, so in other words, it's kind of a lot like Scientology, isn't it? I mean, if you join Scientology, there's 2 levels of membership. If you're, say, Tom Cruise or John Travolta, you get to stay at the Scientology Hotel, this luxury edifice in Hollywood. But if you're a schlub like you or me, we get to build the Scientology Hotel. We go in with hammers and nails and start constructing it. And one last thing about what Klaus Schwab said about if you read science fiction, all the technologies have become true, except maybe for one. That would be the transporter beam, that we see in Star Trek. Because when Elon Musk, through his SpaceX project, builds his version of the Enterprise, and we get that transporter beam, I'm going to be the first, Tamara Ugolini, to say, Elon, beam me up.
Beam me up, Scotty. All right, we're going to hit an ad break, but when we come back, we're actually going to be discussing a couple nitty-gritty COVID-related topics. And, I might make a comment or two that goes against the community standards of YouTube. So if you're still joining us on YouTube, we're going to go to the ad break, and then we're going to cut the stream off of YouTube. So I would urge you to join us on Rumble, Odyssey, or Twitter. And there again, you can send us a hyper chat or a Rumble rant and engage with us directly. But when we come back, we're going to talk about a few COVID topics, including Damar Hamlin and none other than Pfizer. So if you're joining us on YouTube, head on over to a different platform, because after this ad, we're going to cut our YouTube stream to not get ourselves further slaps on the wrist with our community standards infringements.
Oh, hey guys, thanks for watching the live stream, and sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to pop on to tell you about this incredible sweatshirt that I'm wearing, but also all the other great merchandise that we have available at rebelnewsstore.com. We're adding new stuff all the time, so be sure to keep checking. Even if you shop today, there might be something new tomorrow. And if you are shopping, be sure to use the coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout. Again, it's rebelnewsstore.com, coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout.
And there's this great shirt too that I'm wearing. Think while it's still legal. And it won't be for very long now if Bill C-11 passes in the Canadian House of Commons. It's Trudeau's sweeping censorship bill. So you can head on over and you can use code Tamara10 at Rebel News Store to save 10% off. This is one of my favorites. I definitely urge people, whether you agree or not, just think, please, just wear your critical thinking caps and question everything. So it's one of my personal favorites. But David, I didn't realize we skipped over something,